Welcome to the Silent Stage Podcast. Today's guest has been a member of Blue Oyster Cult for 20 years. He's also co-written and co-produced the album The Symbol Remains, as well as their most recent Ghost Stories. You also may have seen him on YouTube, where he has over 100,000 subscribers and plays in a group with his best friends called the Band Geeks. Those Band Geeks are also on tour with the legendary John Anderson, who had a very successful 2023 tour with mostly sold-out shows, and they're looking to do the same in 2024. He co-wrote and co-produced the new John Anderson and the Band Geeks album True, to be released on Frontier Records later this year. Let's give a big welcome to Richie Castellano.
We start like with a fake laugh, right?
Exactly. Perfect. Wow. Good times being had here backstage. All right. So, Richie, obviously you are an enormous Helix user. Something cool about just having you on and just talking here is obviously we've become friends. And first, I was a fan. You know, I watched your Helix tutorials and you got me going with my Helix and kind of inspired me to want to help others. So what made you start going digital, and what made you start going to this silent stage type of thing, or especially in your studio? What brought you to being digital?
I'll give a little background first. I was that guy who only plugged my guitar directly into a tube amp, and that was it. And I did that for years. You know, my first, I'd say, 10 years or so of playing gigs was just, I was the guy, show up with a 212, no pedals, no effects, no nothing. We did an award ceremony with my band. It was in maybe 1999 or so. Andy Ascalise, who was my musical partner and collaborator, he wrote this song and he got an award for it. We had this big award ceremony in Manhattan, and we had to play that song. And when we recorded the song, I had delay on the guitar. Now I had no problem with putting effects on a guitar in the studio. For me, it was, I guess, being an Eric Clapton fan and the Blues Breakers, just knowing that was a Les Paul through a Marshall cranked, like that's the sound. You don't need anything. So
you
that's
were
how
cheating. Effects are cheating.
Yeah, that's how I always felt. It's like, no, the sound is you plug in and that's it. But in recording, I always felt mixing was a different process than guitar sound. Guitar sound comes from the fingers and the guitar and the amp. That's it. The mixing happens after, and I just compartmentalize those. So, but for this, the song we were playing in the record, it had delay on it, and I said, okay, I need delay, and I didn't have a delay pedal, but what I did have was a rack-mounted Alesis MIDI verb with delay. So I just remember before this show, unscrewing it from my studio rack and plugging it into, I had an Ampeg Reverborocket, plugging it into which had an effects loop, into the effects loop. And I heard that and I said, oh, wow, this is why everybody does this. This is so much better. After that, I started getting into, okay, how do I get these effects? And
the amp has reverb. Like
it has like reverb, but
spring reverb, digital.
Yeah, but I never used it. It would stay off.
So you would just be bone dry on stage, nothing.
Yeah,
nothing.
And we used to play really loud, so it didn't matter. It's just you were getting, the whole room was excited.
Your pants were just like.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was great, and having that delay in the effects loop was a big deal. So then after that, I started thinking about, okay, how could I have this set up? And eventually, like, my character arc changed from hero to villain as I just started. I had a rack eventually.
It's safe to speak in Star Wars terms on the silent stage here. So right now you're like episode 2 Anakin at the Tusken Raiders.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So I didn't want to do pedals yet. I wasn't ready to do that. I just thought, if I'm going to have this rack reverb with me and rack effects, okay, I want to get a rack amp. So I had a VHT GP3 rack preamp, a rack power. So I carry a rack around in a 212 cabinet for years.
You still have that, right? In your studio.
It's amazing. I can't get rid of that. That's one of my favorite amps. When I started playing with Blue Oyster Cult, I couldn't lug a rack around with me, and I had to use backline gear. So a nice sort of compromise that I made was I had this TC Electronic Nova system, which was great. I just ran that through the effects loop of whatever rental Mesa Boogie we can get. I usually requested dual rectifiers. Sometimes I'd get triples, but I had that going through the effects loop. It was fine. It was never great. It was always like, well, this is not really the amp I use, even though I like the sound of those amps. It doesn't really sound like the VHT I like. And there was always a problem with those effects loops where there was some sort of latency and phasing issue, and you could never run certain effects on 100% or you'd lose your. It was very weird.
And this is the classic backline problem. And this is also how I wound up in digital too, because when we went to Europe for the first time with Jessica Lynn, it was the same thing. You're hearing back from these European backline companies, and they're just like, I'm playing country pop music, so it's like I just need a distortion pedal and a clean sound. But they like, yeah, we have Princeton amp, and you're like, Princeton Chorus 110, like the $100, solid state, or like a real Princeton reverb. Like, it was so vague that was like, I don't know what to expect from gig to gig.
Yeah.
So it seems kind of like that's happening here too.
Well, that was, I mean, aside from getting my own TC Nova system working now. The TC Nova system was a fantastic unit. It was small, it was small-ish, and it had 8 effects in it, and they were all TC electronics, so they were all good. Like nothing sounded ratty. And then I had this Voodoo Lab control switcher, which had to be hooked up via MIDI and then switch channels on the Mesa. It was a mess. But then I started running into the problem you're talking about, where 1 out of 3 rental backline amps would sound good. I'm having terrible shows 1 out of 3 shows because I don't know what to expect from these backline companies. Now, even when you're getting the same amp, the same Mesa, the same Marshall, the same Fender, right? There's too much room for error. People are beating the crap out of these things with these rental companies, and who knows when the last time these amps were maintenanced or retubed. It just got to the point where it was unsustainable, and I was sort of a modeler. Like I felt like one of these tube purists saying, I need to, even though I'm using digital effects, I need to play through a tube amp. It didn't even occur to me to use a modeler. And also the time period was before this recent generation where they're all good. I said, okay, I'm all about like tube authenticity and having the right tone, but I'm doing that and I'm getting a bad result because these rental amps are not consistent enough. So I thought, well, is playing through a modeler going to be worse than playing through a bad tube amp? That was the question. I didn't have access to one, but one of my students, my guitar students, had a Line 6, I think, was it called the X3? Was that one of them?
I used to have an X3 Live.
That's the one.
With the holes in the foot pedal, like it
That's
had
the
like
one.
a steel looking foot pedal.
I asked my student, I said, you have a Pod X3, right? And he said, yeah. I was like, can I borrow that for a couple weeks? And he said, yeah. So I took his Pod X3 and I said, okay, if I can make a good sound on this, right, with what's in here, I will consider switching to this. So I played with it for 2 weeks and I made a sound that I said, this sound, is it the best sound I've ever heard? No. Is it better than the broken amps from the backline company? 100%. I said, I'd rather play this sound every night than have to deal with the bad backline amp.
The consistency too, like you're going to have that mediocre sound every single night. It's not going to be like tonight's great, next day's awful.
So then I went out and I bought an HD 500, Pod HD 500, which was a huge, I think, leap forward from the Pod X3. I made a set of sounds and I thought they were very good. I wasn't really used to the feeling of going direct. I think we tried it on stage, going direct from the HD 500, and I think no one in the band liked it, and I didn't like it, and it was too weird to try, and it didn't sound right in the ears. So the compromise I came up with was the HD 500. I bought a Matrix, the GT 1000 FX, right, which is a lightweight Class D stereo power amp. I used that, and then I was plugging the HD 500 into that, then going into a rental Marshall and miking it up. And that massive improvement, massive. And everybody loved it. The sound guy loved it. And I'd used that for years. And then the Helix came out. And then I started learning about IRs. So I dug into the Helix and I said, you know what? These IRs, I think I could ditch the cabinet, and go direct. And there were teething pains because going from a 412 cabinet hitting you in the back to nothing was weird. You know, lack of familiarity with the Helix and the whole thing being a new process, going back and forth with a front of house guy. And I'm not saying it sounded bad on the first show. I'm saying he'd have notes for me. Your clean sounds a little too bright. Can you? Yeah, and we'd keep making notes until finally we got to a point where he didn't have to touch anything. Because also, as I was switching presets, he was making adjustments, saying, "Okay, you're driving me crazy when you go to this lead sound."
Yeah, he was chasing you around basically.
We just got it to where every sound fit his mix and was consistent to where he said, "That's it, you got it." And I would watch videos, you know, people cell phone videos of people talking. I'm like, "Yeah, that sounds like the way it used to sound." One thing that really was the clincher for me with the Helix, I have an Angle Steve Morse amp that I love. It's a great amp. And I mic'd it up with a 57 and recorded a little demo on it. And then I said, if I can get this thing, the Helix, to sound exactly like the Steve Morse mic'd up with the 57, and I'll know I have it. And I worked on it for a while at home, and I got it to where I was A-B'ing them in Pro Tools, and I'm like, they're indistinguishable. You can't tell the difference. This sounds like the mic amp. And that's when I realized, okay, I don't need this power amp anymore. This is possible. I can get this sound.
And that's also coming from a tube purist that was not that you were anti-digital, but that you were like, it needs to be this. The story that you just told about having your front of house guy give you the notes and being able to dial this in at gig volume, at gigs. You know, at first you're making changes gig to gig where it's like, hey, you've got to fix XYZ and you have a trusted ear out there. You're actually doing it at gig volume. I'm sure you get emails and stuff all the time, because I do all the time about I plugged my Helix in live or I plugged my modeler in live and it sounds like crap. I don't know what to do. I'm panicking. And I think what you just said is exactly what everybody kind of needs to do, at least for a few times where you're actually plugging into a system, blasting it out at stage volume, full blast, and really having somebody that knows what they're doing out front, or even yourself, you know, go with a wireless, record yourself playing. You could use the loopers and all these modelers. Yeah. And just go out front and listen to this. So
the thing that really boggles my mind when I read this stuff, when you're on a gig with a tube amp and you're miking it up, you futz with the dials.
Of course, every
you know
show.
What I mean? Like,
and the volume knob.
Right. Yeah, the volume knob. And then if you're using in-ears, like I move the mic. I'm like, oh my God, what is it? And I move it until it doesn't sound harsh, until it sounds like what I'm expecting. The thought that, oh, I'm never going to have to do that with the modeler, like that's ridiculous. It's like you do it with the amp. You do it with your pedals. You do it with everything. So I'm just expecting that. The difference is it's very easy to go up to an amp and change it. And if someone's nervous about messing up a preset, which I encounter a lot, people are like, oh, I downloaded this preset, I don't want to change it. I was like, yeah, but if you had an amp, you would change it.
Yeah,
change it. Like
what? It's just knobs.
Yeah, it's just knobs. Also, like if you're really worried about that, you know, make a copy of your gig presets on another bank or another playlist, and these are the pristine ones. These are the ones you're allowed to mangle. Just remember, if you were on a gig with an actual tube amp, you would go. If it's too bright, you would lower that presence knob or that treble knob. You would do that. And for some reason, people are very against it, and they'll say, "Oh, I got one of those modelers. It sounded like crap." I'm like, "Did you try to make it sound good?"
Yeah, did you actually try?
Yeah, like, did you do what you normally do on a gig with your amp? Whereas like, oh, this doesn't sound good. I'm going to change a knob to make it sound right for where I am. It's not exactly like a keyboard, you know, whereas, oh, here's my piano sound. It sounds the same everywhere.
Yeah.
It's not the same animal. It's different for guitars. We change according to the room, and we do it all the time.
Yeah.
With our gear.
Our fingers and the pick are so much a part of the sound as much as what's amplifying it. Like, obviously, touch and feel for a piano when you're playing it, like personal to the player, is one thing, but like our fingers have EQ. Like our fingers have sound, and like you can't really account for that. Like if I plug into your Richie's preset, if I plug into that, it'll sound different here than it does there. We have different pickups, different guitars, scale length, wood.
The variables with the guitar is like you just said, the pickups. the type of guitar, the person playing it, that it makes it sound different. And I get a lot of people, hey, how come when I downloaded your Comfortably Numb preset, it doesn't sound like the way you play? I was like, well, I'm using a different guitar than you. I might pick a little differently than you. It's tough. It's a moving target, and I try to help people get into the ballpark. But with my videos, when I do YouTube stuff, I'm not trying to say, here's the sound. I'm trying to say, here's the technique. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is the technique to get it. The principle stays the same because it's based on the same technology. And here's what I mean by that. The thing that I think throws people off with the Helix in particular is that it actually works exactly the way it's supposed to. You know what I mean? Like, people go, I just pulled up the Marshall with the 57. Wow, it sounds harsh. I'm like, yeah.
Have you ever recorded a Marshall with a 57 with all knobs at noon and just put a mic in front of it?
That's what it sounds like. It's accurate and almost to, I'm not going to say to a fault, but it's accurate because that's what it is. It's supposed to be that. I thought of that as logical. And I thought the Helix, when I first got it, was laid out perfectly this way because it had the two processors, the two paths. And I'm like, okay, the first path is my guitar chain. The second path is my studio chain.
That's a great idea.
You know what I mean? And that's how I was thinking about it. This is my tone in my amp. So if I need a pedal or like a wah-wah or something, I'll go before the amp. Then I have my cabinet, my EQ, because like my VHT has a 5-band EQ on it. So that's where that goes into the cabinet. That's the first path. Then it goes to my post effects, which I would usually do in the studio anyway. My EQ, maybe some compression if I need it. And that's that. I'm always expecting after I mic up a guitar amp that it's going to go through the mixing process. I'm going to EQ stuff. I'm going to take out stuff I don't need. I'm going to sweeten it up with some effects. That's something that I think not everybody wants to do.
Well, it's also, you went to school for this. You have a degree in that. And a lot of people think that, like you said, that it's just going to be there. Like the records that you hear, the sounds that you hear on recordings, like these people know what they're doing, not just with an amp and a cabinet and a microphone, but they know what they're doing post, which I think is so important.
Well, that's another comment. People say, why do you have to use so many EQs? And the way I'm thinking about it is it's like, no, the first one is just my regular guitar amp EQ. And then the second one, that's the mixing chain. That's just how I was thinking about it. And it just because that's how I do it when I record. You know what I mean? I get my guitar sound as close as I can, then I record it, and then once it's mixed, I go, okay, I got to take some of this out, or this is missing this, or whatever. And then I mix it. And I think to me, that's a good workflow. I understand that some of the other, and you would know better than me, some of the other modeling companies, they have it's like pre-mixed. It sounds like it's good to go.
No, they're all the same.
Oh, they're all the same. Okay.
To be fair, I think owning all the modelers, I think they all have this exact same issue. For example, like Fractal or somebody like has stock presets that are a little bit more ready where you don't need to do things on your own. Mm-hmm. But I also think that is kind of like a training wheel that you're never going to get off.
Right.
You know, like I personally think that everybody should know their gear and should know how to use it because I'm the type of person that when I'm on a gig, I need to know how to do everything and be prepared for anything. If something goes down, if something goes off, if something doesn't sound good, I need to know how to fix it.
Yeah.
And that maybe gets lost in some, like, it's just the Fractal, I would say, that sounds amazing stock, which is awesome. But if you take a stock preset out on a gig, for example, and you don't know how to go in and manipulate it, you're going to run into more trouble than if you just took the time to really learn this stuff. I mean, I don't have any degree in music or production or engineering of any sort, but I'm, like you said before, I'm just not afraid to turn knobs.
My dad has an HX Effects, and I made presets for him. And the video that we posted, he still uses those presets, and he keeps going to me, Rich, we got to update my sounds. I need new sounds. I said,
the old tube amp snob that never wants different sounds needs updated sounds.
I said, just mess with it. I said, it's all in there. He said, nope. He said, you have to come here and do it. And it's a perfect example because he doesn't want to change anything. And I get it because he's afraid he's going to break something, but it's like you really can't. And plus, I
Yeah.
have all of his presets stored on my computer. So if you
And
if you really
that's a great video, by the way, if anybody wants to check it out. Richie's dad, John Castellano, is also an amazing musician, singer, guitar player, has his own music store, and he's old school.
yeah.
To put it short, he's old school, and yeah, Richie basically said, "Here's an HX Effects with all pedals that you'll like. Go and try it."
Well, he was using a 3-pedal board. It was like a tuner, a tube screamer, and a chorus pedal. That was his whole board. And then he was saying, I think I want to get a big pedal board. I want to get a delay. I'm like, you could do that. I said, but like if you're just using 2 pedals, you can easily replicate the tube screamer and your chorus pedal. I said, and then you'll have some other things. You'll have some different flavors of overdrive and you'll have some delays. And he liked that. But the cool thing about that video is with him was going back and forth between his tube screamer and the Scream 808. And then he listened to it and said, yeah, that sounds the same. And that was sort of the aha moment for him. And he went, oh, okay. Yeah, fine. If it's and my dad never touches the knobs on the tube screamer. He just like leaves it. That's it. You got to be okay with mangling a few presets and learning things. The interesting thing that happened when the HX Stomp came out is that all of us kind of realized, wait a minute, maybe we don't need all this stuff, because the convenience factor of having your whole rig into something this big was great. There is something to be said for being able to do it with fewer blocks. You had to get a little more creative about it. And I think some of the HX presets I made are probably better than my Helix presets, just because you're using less stuff and you're putting a little more thought into it than just sort of, okay, well, here's the sound. Let me slap a EQ on it as a Band-Aid and fix it. It's like, no, well, let me see if I can, fix it first. I always take a DI when I record, and the few times I haven't really bit me in the ass. It's sometimes in good ways, sometimes in bad ways. I'll tell you those stories in a second. During COVID, I did all these live stream gigs, so I have like 100 presets of different cover songs and original songs, and I usually find just scrolling through one of those, I find kind of close to the flavor I want, and just go, because I don't want to spend too much time futzing with the gear while I'm recording. If I have an idea, I want to get it down quickly. I'll take the DI. So if the sound I got happened to not work, I'll then run it through Helix Native, and Helix Native is amazing.
And that's another credit to Line 6. They're the only company that offers the entire modeler in plugin format. Hey everyone, just want to say thanks for listening. This is a reminder to go join the HX Stomp XL giveaway in the links below. I also wanted to share with you something really cool that Richie posted. This is an actual live performance and a free preset that's going to be available for you guys to download and check out. So I'll let Richie take it from here and enjoy the rest of the show.
Hey, Richie Castellano here. Today I'm talking about the song Tainted Blood from the 2020 Blue Oyster Cult album, The Symbol Remains. I want to talk particularly about the solo. A few weeks back, I posted a video on my social media. Someone was kind enough to capture the solo, and I posted it, and I got some good feedback on it. Helix Native is so good, it sounds identical to the hardware. Another thing I use, the IK Multimedia Z-Tone. I got that as a paid thing to do a YouTube video on. I ended up keeping that. It's so good.
Is it just it's impedance on the way in? Like it's the DI box?
It's a DI. It's got all these. I set it at noon and leave it just because it was very clean sounding. I always plug into that before the Helix here in the studio. It's a perfect like reamping kind of situation. But yeah, that's the way I do it. I just I don't really care too much about the tone going in. I sometimes will do it, like on this last record we just recorded. Andy Graziano was the guitar player, and
let's talk about who we recorded is, because it's kind of a So yeah, come on.
We just finished recording a John Anderson album, John Anderson and the Band Geeks. So my band's the Band Geeks, and John Anderson is John Anderson from Yes.
Yeah, that little band.
For him, we made a few presets that he felt comfortable with because I wanted him to be comfortable. And before we started recording, we imported some of his live presets that we did for our tour last year, and then made them a little drier for the studio. Because I don't like to record guitars with delay and reverb because I need control of that in the mix. You might have delay on your sound and it might not be enough, or it might be too much. I need to do that later. That's just how I feel about it.
No, that makes sense. We do that too. We're recording the Jessica Lynn album right now. Like my pedal board, my HX Stomp XL pedal board's on the floor, and we're doing the same thing where I'm going through Rupert Neve DI, going one dry, one processed.
Yeah.
And, I'll have what I think is like, this is such a kick-ass sound. Like, yeah, it's got the perfect amount of delay, perfect amount of reverb. And then, like, by the time it gets to mixing, it's like, yeah, we're redoing the whole guitar sound.
We did that quite a bit on this. A lot of the sounds, like, just worked, and he was really playing into the sound, and it just, like, leave it. It's good. But sometimes I would be mixing, and I would say, I can't get this thing to work. And at that point, I would just pull up the Helix Native plugin, leave the track up while I'm doing the sound, which is great. the best way to do it. It's, scrolling through amps, listening to how it's reacting and what frequencies are sticking out and resonating. Like, it was great. What we were really worried about is, does this sound good for the song we're doing? Which is really what we should all be. Yeah.
Imagine that.
There was one instance where in the demo, I just pulled up whatever sound. And when we did the demos for it, me, Andy Ascalise, and Chris Clark, we did a lot of that together. And we said, we should do a guitar solo here. And I did a scratch guitar solo, and fully intending that it was going to be replaced. Every time I do that, it ends up staying on the record, and I'm like, well, that's the sound. That's it, because I didn't do a DI, So that's just a lesson. Always do a DI.
And you're also, you're genuinely being you, and performance, I feel like, will trump everything, always.
I wish I remember what guitar and what preset I used on this. If I had to guess, I think it was my Axis, and I think I have a Dream Theater preset I made from my live stream and played this solo at the end of one of the songs, fully expecting Andy Graziano, who's the band's guitar player, to, in this tour, I'm playing bass. This band, I play bass most of the time. But for the demos, I played guitar. So I played this solo, and then we showed the demo to John, and he said, wow, that solo. And I said, yeah, we're going to replace that with...
yeah, don't even pay attention to that.
Yeah, don't listen to that. He said, don't touch that solo. I said, really? He goes, yeah, that's the one. Leave it alone. So I said, okay.
If the boss says yes, that's all that matters.
Andy, I said, well, you're out of that one, bud. Sorry.
Yeah. You got tabs for that, bro?
Where that bit me in the ass was on the Blue Oyster Cult record, because we did an album in 2020 called The Symbol Remains,
which you have a lot of writing credits. You produced it also.
I co-produced that. I wrote or co-wrote, I think, 7 songs on that record, and I'm very proud of that one. And that one did really well. We're in the studio, and me being like production guy, I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to replace all of these sounds. So when the engineer said, hey, do you want me to take a DI from the guitar? I was like, nah, this is all scratch. I said, we're here to just get a good drum performance. That's it. That's what I was thinking. So he did a song called Nightmare Epiphany, and there's a trading guitar solo between me and Buck in the end. And I didn't think about I didn't care. I was thinking, no, I'm going to go home and redo this when I can. So I put on like a metal preset or something, right? And just played a solo. I think for that song, Buck was using my Strat, because I brought a bunch of guitars to the studio. I brought a Tele, a Strat, a Les Paul, just to have all the food groups covered, And in that song, Buck just grabbed my Strat and he played it. And so me and him are in the studio going back and forth. And I think he was going through a Kemper at the time, and I was going through a Helix, and I had just my Kill preset on. And this song is kind of like, it's not a high gain song. Let's put it that way. I should have had a more edge of breakup, classy sound. You know what I mean? And I had my just Kill preset on. So we're going back and forth, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm just going to replace all this. But it was good. Like the take, so that if you go to listen to Simple Remains, Blue Oyster Cult, Nightmare Epiphany, that's live. That's us playing. I think we overdubbed a couple of like little keyboard things or whatever, but the core band, like, me, Buck, Danny, and Jules, that's us playing live. When I said, okay, Buck, I'm gonna replace my guitar. He's like, no, you're not. I said, no, that was scratch. I'm gonna do better than that. He goes, no, you're not. He said, that's staying. So I went, oh no, because my sound was just so wildly inappropriate for that song. But I was able to just EQ it a little bit to where it was less Pantera.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of what it sounded like.
Yeah, that's such a cool story. I mean, so you just told two stories back to back, and I don't know if you even realize what this sounds like coming out of another person's mouth. Two heroes of yours.
Yeah.
Both are telling you, do not touch that solo that you just played. Is that not, I mean, because you're people that don't know you personally, like you're so not an ego guy at all. Like you play with some of the biggest rock stars in the world, and like you're so not a bragging ego guy, but like how does that make you feel that like Buck and John Anderson are like, dude, that solo was perfect, we're not touching it, leave it alone?
With John Anderson, I was happy because the tone was good. I happened to just randomly pick a good preset.
So your mind goes, oh shit, now I'm stuck with this.
Yeah, that's it. But with the Blue Oyster Cult one, it was just like, okay, yeah, I guess the solo's fine. It's just like, I wish I would have played it on a twangier sound or something, but it was cool. And then I remember when we went to get it mixed, Tom Lord Alge mixed the record, and I said, I don't like this guitar sound. Do what you can. That's what I told him.
Polish this turd.
But I'm just like remembering the freaking attitude I had when the engineer said, "You want us to DI this?" I was like,
not keeping this. This is garbage.
This is not going to make it to the mix. No, silly man. We don't need to DI this. And
don't waste your time. Don't waste your time.
And I went, no, he was right. I'm an idiot. That's a lesson learned, and apparently a lesson I didn't learn because I did it again on this record. So
hey, maybe that's what you need, though. Sometimes like when you kind of take the producer hat off, you take the hat off, and you're just a guitar player filling space, playing music.
I think there's two lessons from that. The one lesson that I just said is record a DI while you're going, and the other lesson is try to get at least in the ballpark, even if you know you're going to reamp it, which was my mistake with the BOC one, is I wasn't in the ballpark. I just was like, okay, yeah, it's a good solo preset. We're not going to use this anyway. And that was, I should have been like, let me get something appropriate for this song.
Have you gotten any commentary on the solo? Like, has anybody like, I mean, I know Blue Oyster Cult has some fans, man. Like
nobody cares except for me.
You're the only person on earth that listens to that solo now and is like, oh man, this sounds not right.
I check my email every day for an angry message saying, how dare you?
You're waiting for that one guy.
Yeah. How dare you record a solo on that song with this inappropriate sound? But it hasn't happened yet.
But you also know that if anybody felt that way, there sure as hell would be an email about it.
Yeah, there would be. And I also think Tom Lord Alge did some magic to it, even though he probably didn't. It's all in my head.
Just tell yourself that.
Yeah, I think he put it through. I think he has. Here's the scenario that's playing in my head. He has this like mythical piece of analog gear that
of course
mere mortals can't get, and he ran my guitar through it, and it just fixed it.
Of course,
right? That's what happened. That's
definitely.
what I'm going with that.
When you went to the HX Stomp, and by the way, I said it in the intro, but Sweetwater does sponsor the Silent Stage podcast, and they are giving away an HX Stomp XL after the 3rd episode. So if it's your first time listening, check the links in the description, and you could just basically go to my Sweetwater landing page, put in your email, and you can enter to win the HX Stomp XL.
I just ordered one of those.
Did you get the white one?
Oh,
you're not. You like black. Look at you. Look at you.
None more black. I think I'm getting the black one because I sort of, all my gear is black. It's stupid. It doesn't matter what color it is.
You're an edgy rocker, man.
Oh yeah.
You're a tough guy.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's me. I want to use it. Last year with the Band Geeks, in the John Anderson tour, I brought out 2 Helix racks. I wanted a big mega rig with, redundant. And then I said, you know what? I have a refrigerator behind me, basically.
Yeah.
And I said, I need to scale this down. So I'm going to be using the HX Stomp XL as the backup rig.
And I was lucky enough to come to your show in New York City and be photographer. You guys are so good. Like, not even just like, I personally am not a Yes fan. I'm not that I'm not enjoying music. I'm a Richie fan.
Thank you. I'm a Steve fan.
I went to see Richie.
This is a love fest.
Yeah, well, I went to see Richie and the Andes, and I wanted to see my buddy play in a sold out house, and just the amount of sound coming from the stage with no tracks, no anything, just the amount that you guys are doing. And you've got how many? You've got like 7 or 8 HX products, whether it's the Helix.
Yeah, we were using. I had 2 on stage. One was a backup, so that's 1 for me. Chris Clark, our keyboard player, he uses the HX effects for his lead synth. So that's all of his delays, reverbs, distortions. That's all coming from the HX effects. This is actually a funny story. Our other keyboard player, Rob, his right before the tour, his keyboard had a problem and the Leslie wouldn't work.
That's a problem.
He was using the Leslie from the HX Stomp.
Did anybody write any emails?
No, I'm still waiting for them.
Because that's one thing, people always slag on the HX Leslie effect. So that's actually really interesting to hear that a keyboard player playing the Leslie effects in HX Stomp in John Anderson's band.
So that worked out really well. And then our other guitar player, Andy Graziano, he had he is the guitar player. He had a Helix floor
Mm-hmm.
for his electric and a Variax, and then he had the Variax acoustic going into a Helix LT,
which nobody sees. I mean, the Helix Variax acoustic. That's the Helix, the Line 6 Variax acoustic.
I'm glad I have 4 of them, so I'm ready for the apocalypse.
I mean, you can imagine how much better the tech would have gotten. I mean, they stopped developing it years ago, and look, even when they rebuilt the HX internals. Like if they had been putting any R&D into Variax, where it would be now, and you're using it on super high-end stages.
I have a controversial opinion about the Variax.
Okay.
I actually think the Variax represents a needed evolution in guitars, but I think that as a community, we are resistant to anything that was invented after 1959, especially with guitars. I mean, I think people are warming up to modelers and stuff because just not having to schlep a amp around. People I know who are really purists are warming up to the lighter gear just because it's a back saver. You know what I mean? And especially people who play a lot of gigs or who are in a cover band or in a wedding band or people who do fly out dates. It just makes sense. But the guitars, we're not ready yet.
Yeah, we're still bringing 5 or 6 guitars because you need this one in E flat, you need a drop D, you need a half step up, half step down. Like, it's nonsense what we do. I feel like one of the most comfortable tours I ever did was with my Variax, and I only took it on one tour because I'm like, oh well, I have cool guitars. There's something for some reason that like Variax was like, not that it's uncool because it's such an awesome concept. I have the 59. It's a flame top Les Paul style guitar. I need to be in drop D. Boom. I'm in drop D. I need to be capo first fret because we're playing an F. Boom. I'm now in F. Why am I not doing this?
This is probably not the marketing line that they would like, but I always thought that's the perfect second guitar to bring on a gig. It's like the first guitar is going to be your favorite guitar. And look, we're all picky about guitars.
Yeah.
We've played thousands of guitars to find the one. And
then we find another one.
Yeah, and then you end up with 30 of them somehow. But that's going to be your guitar because that's your personality. But I always found like you bring that and you bring a Variax because that's going to do everything else.
Yeah.
For the one song where you need this or whatever. It's funny, like I see guys like Steve Howe does that, and yes, Steve Howe has his Gibson that he plays, and then right in front of him is a Variax to do all the other stuff. So there's an application for it and a demand for it as a sort of a catch-all. It can do everything else, you know. And I still, when I tour with Blue Oyster Cult, I have my main guitar, which is right now an Ernie Ball Albert Lee, and the Variax Standard, which does everything else. And also, if anything happens, you know, I break a string or something breaks on my guitar, I can easily do the whole gig on the Variax because it's a good guitar.
I used to use the passive pickups. I actually didn't mind them.
They're fine
on the 59, you know, and I would just pop it on, pop it off. And there was even songs where I would think I would a rhythm part on one guitar, and then I would need the Les Paul sound for the solo. And if I need the Les Paul sound, I'm not going to use the modeled Les Paul when I'm playing the Variax. And I just feel like you got a different sustain and natural feel.
Look, it is different. And that's the thing. It's like people will go, oh, this doesn't feel like my Les Paul. I'm like, well, it's not your Les Paul. It's not. It's a computer guitar, but it's doing a pretty damn good job.
Yeah.
You know, the reason I changed the pickups was there was nothing wrong with the stock pickups. I agree. It's just that I needed something as a backup for my Axis at the time. And when I switched guitars, I needed it to sound kind of the same and to be able to run magnetic and just plug my wireless into it.
Yeah.
You know, and not have to use the VDI cable. So as a pure backup instrument, it made more sense for me to do that. And since then, I've seen a lot of people doing it. I guess everybody. Well, now it doesn't matter if you avoid the warranty. I guess if they're not making it anymore. But you know, I knew that if I had a problem, Partev would talk me through it.
Yeah, it's nice. That's one thing too about Line 6.
Thank you, Partev.
Yeah, shout out to Partev. I mean, there's so many Line 6 guys that work for Line 6 that are so active in the communities, and you know, it's a testament to what it's probably like to work there. That everybody wants to be there.
Yeah, if I sound like a Line 6 fanboy, it's because I am, and they're great to me, and I love everybody at that company. I have a great relationship with them, and people ask me, why don't you try the Fractal? And I think the Fractal's great. I think every time I hear you play through it, or Danny Miranda from Blue Oyster Cult, he plays through one, sounds great. Everybody, and Buck, when he records on the Simple Remains, all the stuff that Buck recorded in his home studio, he used the Fractal. Great sounds. For me, it's like I have this ingrained into my workflow now, and the big clincher is the Variax. The fact that I can plug the VDI cable into it and it powers it. It's like that's it. That's my rig, and I wouldn't be able to do that with Kemper or a Tone Master or a Quad Cortex. Although I do love the form factor of the Quad Cortex. You know, the size of it is pretty cool. Yeah, that's a nice size. You know,
it is a great size.
But that's also why I'm excited about getting the HX Stomp XL, because it's kind of like similar to that.
I think the HX is a better shape. So this is something you'll probably appreciate more of. You talk a lot about workflow and like the ease of things. With the HX XL, it's pedal sized, just long.
Right.
So if you're used to building pedal boards, and you know, pedal boards are made for pedals. So if it's just going on the floor, then either or are going to be just as good. But if you plan on using, like, I put my wireless on my pedal board with my HX Stomp XL.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I have room. I could put my favorite overdrive pedal, and I could put the Eventide H90 on it. I was like, and this is still smaller and lighter than my Helix.
And then you don't miss the second processor.
Correct.
Right.
And the HX XL being pedal sized and just long, I can fit it on a pedal board with other things, and it can supplement. With the Quad Cortex, it's a little bit bigger. Height wise, it's a little taller than a normal pedal would be. I couldn't put my wireless and I couldn't put the Eventide on here because the Quad Cortex took up too much of the pedal board.
Oh, so you like that it's long. It's okay.
Hey now, wrong show.
Yeah. I've done gigs with just an HX Stomp, and I always had to plug in an external foot pedal and just to get. And then I'm thinking, if this thing only had more knobs or more buttons, and now they have it. I'm like, okay, I'm very excited to do that.
And I've been meaning to make a video on like kind of my best accessories for an HX Stomp.
Yeah.
He makes a foot switch 4 and 5 for the little HX Stomp that he sends you a sticker that goes right under the screen, and it has a 4 and 5 3D printed on it. So you have 1, 2, 3 on the bottom, and then you have the 2 on. Hold on, I'll grab it. So yeah, this is a shameless, non-affiliated plug, but look at this thing.
Oh, wow.
And it plugs right into the top. He sends you the patch cable too.
That's so cool.
It's awesome for the little stomp if you're going to be a little stomper.
Oh, you know what else I want? If we could talk about that, our friend Chad Boston.
Oh yeah,
He those Helix toppers.
I've got them on all of mine.
Well, okay, so I only have him on the top row because with the boots I wear on stage, I couldn't hit the buttons.
I'm not I'm not shitting you at all. On my HX Stomp XL, I only have them on the top row.
Yeah, that's perfect for me. And I also have a screen protector. He makes great stuff. We do a lot of these European metal fests, and one thing that I'm super jealous about that the Kemper has is these metal bands, and they all do it. They plop their Kemper down in a 4x12 cabinet and plug it in, and they're ready to go. There's no sound checks. There's a 20-minute changeover, and I remember watching this metal band, and these guys, they just put the Kemper down on a 412 Marshall, plug it in, and they're ready. That's it. You know, having the power amp built in is genius.
Yeah.
You know, I love that. But that actually brings up something else that we forgot to mention. When I first did the Helix with Blue Oyster Cult, I was going completely direct. The guys in the band didn't like it because all of a sudden they said it was weird. It was like I was not present on the stage anymore.
There's such an adjustment curve, even playing wise, like having to learn how to. I feel like my technique got better because like learning how to actually pull sustain out of a guitar, even like putting vibrato on a note that will actually keep it ringing without the help of the air moving was huge.
But the whole thing is with Blue Oyster Cult and with John, you know, John wants to hear some amps on stage, and so do Buck and Eric. And Eric actually came up to me the first time I did it, and he said, "This is too weird. You got to have something." So then we started advancing a monitor speaker. I got I have every flavor of Power Cab. The Power Cab is amazing, by the way. It's to me, that's like, if you're going to use a modeler, you should get that thing because it's awesome. If I can't get that, whatever QSC or Mackie, plug into there, and I use the Helix's global EQ to compensate for the different frequency curves of the different monitors.
RCF NX12 SMA is the one I like best. I see a lot of people say that RCF designed it, and I'm friends with the vice president of RCF. They designed that for modelers. They actually designed it probably about a decade ago, like to accommodate a Kemper.
Right.
And that's kind of been like a mainstay for, it's coaxial. So the tweeter's behind the speaker. So it actually is more like a guitar speaker. It's one thing that always bothers me about monitors is the tweeter. It always has like that like honky thing.
Yeah, well, that's why I, usually when I plug into one of those, I just take the high cut and try to bypass it.
Yeah.
On my Helix. But if I had a wish, would be to have something that looks like a Marshall 4x12, but is a powered speaker and is lightweight and has a Class D power amp. One of the companies makes one that looks like a proper guitar amp, but it weighs like 60 pounds.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, no, we're past things weighing too much.
And the Fender Tone Master came out.
Oh, that one looks really cool.
But I feel like you can't have a deluxe looking amp on stage.
It doesn't really matter too much. I mean,
it's not black.
I just thought it would be cool to have something that looks like a 412. And maybe if you want to go nuts, you put a depth and presence control on it if you must.
If you really want to go crazy.
I mean, selfishly, because at a gig, from a backline company, that would be perfect for me. I would just plug my Helix into that and call it a day.
Yeah, and then you'd be done. You'd be just like the Kemper folk.
I'm so jealous of those guys. I don't even remember what they sounded like. I was just,
after I saw damn it, you're done already?
I said, oh my God, that's so great. Look at them. These gigs are getting hard. It's getting hard to travel to gigs, and with airline regulations and attention span and changeover, like you said, the 20-minute changeover. Like, how long do you think the changeover was at Woodstock? No one ever talks about that, but it probably is very long. Yeah.
Like now they expect festivals like to be on and off in 20 minutes. That's why, like, if you want any type of hearing situation to work out for you, you have to be drop and plug and play. You have to be.
That's it. I agree. Now that I'm fully involved with fake amps, I I fully embrace this technology. I think the sound is pretty much there. You know what I mean?
Good. It's good enough at least.
I A/B'd things and showed people, and they couldn't tell the difference. You know,
and that's the thing. We're always going to try to not think that.
The hard thing to do is the feel thing. Although I've gotten used to it now. But I will admit, you know, when I go to my dad's house and I plug into one of his a Fender Vibroverb on 10,
you're like,
yeah, that's a nice feeling, you know. Yeah. And
but it's a selfish feeling, to be fair.
It is, because you're playing that's louder than you'll ever need to play,
and you're the only one that gives a shit.
Right, and also it has no bearing on what the audience is going to hear.
Yes,
because someone's going to throw a mic in front of it, and if they put it in the wrong place, they can sabotage your sound.
They can make it sound like this.
Yeah, that's it.
Very easily.
I did a local gig filling in for a friend, and I showed my rig was Power Cab 212, the Helix, and my Albert Lee guitar, and it was great, you know. And it no direct, no plug into a system. It was just like the Power Cab was the amp, the Helix was the pedal. That's it. And
yeah.
I thought that was a great rig. I ended up doing the gig more like I used to, where I just kind of like parked on one preset that sounded really good in the room, and I just played that all night. You know, this wasn't a cover band where I needed to do 50 sounds. This was a jazz gig. Yeah. So one sound was fine. And that was great. And actually, I used our favorite model, was it the GSG?
Oh, the Grammatico?
The Grammatico, yeah.
That everybody flipped out over and neither of us loved?
Well, I couldn't get it to sound good. Once I put a compressor in front of it, and the whole thing just woke up. But still, I can get that one sound. That's a challenge to me. I'm gonna have to watch someone else's YouTube video on how to dial that in, because
I'll throw that to John Cordy, because he's a big
he liked that. He liked that amp.
Yeah, well, he makes everything sound good. I mean, he's one of those guys.
I'll watch his video. I want to see how they're doing it, because you know. Also, I was never really familiar with that style of amp before. See, when I got the Helix, I was really excited that they put an angle fireball in there, because I'm like, yeah, that's me, baby. You know, let's go. And so that's still, from day one, that was my lead guitar sound. That is still my lead guitar sound. I love that amp. I haven't found anything that does what that does. And then my other favorite update from them was the Friedman.
Yeah.
Those are great. Placator.
Placator, right? Dirty and clean. Yeah.
That's my all-night sound, the Placator. It's so good. You know, I play around sometimes, but I'm pretty loyal to my 3 or 4 amps that I use all the time.
Yeah, so that's something I wanted to ask you.
Yeah.
And we can close on this. I wanted to ask you, being that you do these amazing cover shows, these sometimes over 2 hours straight, one-man shows, which you
I haven't done them in a while, but they were 3 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how the hell you did it. And this is a question I get all the time, and kind of like debates that happen in my comment section. So talking about the HXXL, I am on one preset now. Like, talk about the simplicity. Like, I don't try to copy the sounds of the record anymore. I try to sound like me. And even for cover gigs, when we were still doing cover gigs, I used to always try to have diverse sounds and try to nail sounds. And I talk about my touring preset, and a lot of people say, oh, well, I play in a cover band and I can't do that because I need a ton of different sounds. So how many sounds do you use to cover your 3-hour marathon gigs? And these are straight. No, you don't take a break because you're live.
No.
And is it all automated? Like, you have the changes?
All automated.
The changes are automated. Everything's automated.
I think I have 110 sounds, 120 sounds.
I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, well,
I was hoping you're like, nah, dude, keep it simple and play guitar. You need like 5.
Well, that show is very different, because that show is very like pre-worked out, pre-arranged. Tried my best to nail every single sound. I'd try to keep every song to at least one preset, but there were some songs that ended up being 6 presets.
Wow.
Like, I used to do Changes by Yes, And because that would go from Variax acoustic to electric and all this crazy stuff, like that required 6 presets.
You're the only guy that's going that hard.
Yeah, no, I have an entire Helix playlist that's almost full dedicated to the live stream, right? Like I almost can't add any more songs for a situation where I don't have complete control. Less sounds is better.
Yeah. So if you're playing in a band, say the Band Geeks did a live concert.
Okay, I have that playlist too.
A 2-hour show, or 2 45-minute sets.
I think this is how I do it. I do this for Blue Oyster Cult too. I have 4 sounds, right, that I can do most everything with. And if you've watched any of my videos before, you'll know what they are. It's a clean sound, a gritty sound, a crunchy sound, and a lead sound. Those are the 4 sounds. And within those sounds, I leave myself effects that I can turn on and off. So I have some kind of modulation, some kind of delay, some kind of chorus, and maybe some kind of gain boost in every one of those. So I think between those permutations, you can pretty much cover all the ground. If there's a song that has something really specific in it, right, then I'll make a new preset. And the preset will most likely start as a copy of one of those 4 sounds, just to not confuse the palette of what we're doing, to keep everything in the same sonic space and not screw up the front of house guy. Or there might be a song where I need a completely different guitar sound. We're doing a Queen song and I have to go from my regular like humbucker into a Marshall kind of sound into Brian May. You know what I mean? That's a totally different setup. Then there's another thing where it's like part of the reason why you get gigs is if you show up with the right sounds. If you show up and your whole modeler or your pedal, even your pedal board, if you're a type of guy who has a pedal board and gets a rental deluxe, like if all of that's set up for every song, you say, oh, for this tune, I got this sound down. As long as you get there, that's good. And that's a big part of getting hired to do things.
Being employable.
Yeah. Here's the song. I want it to sound like the song. Make it sound like the song. You go, well, I have this really cool, deluxe tube amp or whatever, or the boutique amp, and I'm going to use that. And they go, okay, yeah, it sounds nice, but I want this cheesy ass sound from the record. And I got to learn how to get that with my nice boutique amp now. My
one amp in the Helix now that I use is the Matchstick, the matchless amp.
That's great. I use that too.
I love it. So I plug in my, these things go for I didn't pay this, but they go for like $5,000 now.
Wow.
And I'm like, you know what? For this recording, I want to use the real thing, set it up. I plug it in using my 2 Notes Captor X, and I plug it in and I'm like, where's my sound? Why does my digital modeling version of the exact same amp that costs 1,000th of it? Why? And like even my father-in-law, who's our producer for Jess's music, he's just like, can you just go back to your normal sound? So
yeah. Yeah, there's something to be said for that. I mean,
when it's dialed in, it's dialed in. It's done. You forget it's, getting your sound as a guitar player versus, putting your producer hat on. There's such a yin and yang to this all, like where it's like, do I just want to shut up and play? Like, that's like the takes of the solos that you had that were great. Like, do I just want to shut up and be a player, or do I want to really overthink this and try to do what's right? Because sometimes trying to do what's right affects performance. And
no, I mean, really, you got to just get the take down as quickly as possible, and that's what all this technology allows us to do. To that effect, one of my favorite, well, actually, my favorite album of all time is "Talk" by Yes, and I learned that Trevor Rabin, I think all the guitar sounds came from a Korg A something, like rack mounted guitar thing, and that was all the guitar sounds. And
how many emails did he get?
I don't. We talk about a piece of gear and we thumb our noses at it, and it's like, yeah, but maybe that's got something in there,
or maybe it's the player.
Yeah, oh yeah, but that too. Well, that's why when people ask me about, oh, can you send me this preset? I just say, you're going to be disappointed. It's because you're not using my guitar and you don't play like me. You play like you, and you have your guitar.
And so, that's not a good or a bad thing. It's just reality.
No, but in that case, when people reach out to me asking me about presets, I'd say, you're better off booking a session with me so I can dial in your thing to how you're playing.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to sound the same unless you have the same exact gear. You know, people go, hey, I downloaded your preset that you made on a Strat. It sounds like crap on my Les Paul.
Exactly.
Well, go figure.
Yeah.
Go figure that. The dream is that we can do that. I want the Bohemian Rhapsody solo sound. I want to buy this thing that I can just turn on, plug into, and I sound like that. And people are trying to do that. There are products that do that, but someone wants one thing that's going to do everything. But then a step closer to that is the Variax. I use them. I have 4 of them. You use them.
Countless professionals.
Steve Howe uses it. Trevor Rabin uses it. The guy from the Doobie Brothers uses it. The guy from Jefferson Starship uses it. It's like the proof is in the pudding there. You have pros using this because it's a valuable tool. But the thing is, like, that's how we get to that point. The X factor there is that the guitars all sound different. I guess I didn't answer any question there. I explained why I'm as confused as everybody.
Yep.
That's all.
I mean, that's also a thing too. Like, people think that because, you know, you're a professional, that you do this for a living, that you have the answers. But the truth is, I feel like none of us really know what the hell we're doing.
We're all trying to find the sound that's in our heads, and we're all trying to do it in as efficient a way as possible that we can afford to do.
Or we overcomplicate things and spend way more money than we need to.
You know, maybe one day we will have a solution where it's just like, oh, there's a software. I'm giving people good ideas on this podcast. I'm just letting you know. If there's a way, so say for example, your favorite guitar is a Gretsch Country Gentleman, right? What it will do is it will do almost like the way room calibration software or
the amp profiling, amp capturing.
So basically you play your guitar a little bit into it and it analyzes it, and also the way you play, right? And then it goes, okay, here is the profile of your guitar with your pickups. There you go. Okay, you want it to sound like a Strat for the Stevie Ray Vaughan preset? It'll apply the correct
differential. Yeah, your correction.
Differential, the negative of what that needs to be before it hits the preset, right?
Wow.
So it's like, boom, now your guitar sounds like a Strat. It's not only a Strat, it sounds like his Strat. And you don't have to play another guitar, right? Now, I do a version of this. Like with Blue Oyster Cult, I play a guitar with 2 humbuckers, right? But I have a preset that I want to sound like a Tele. So my first block is I have a 10-band EQ, and I'm, twanging it up a bit to get it to sound like more like a Tele. But what if there was something more sophisticated than that? Companies, I'm giving you gold here.
I think it would be IK Multimedia. Did you see what they just came out with, by the way? They made that new ARC thing. Did you see that? They actually send you a microphone, and they tell you to put it in your mixing position.
You mean this?
Oh, you have it. There you go.
I just got it this week. It's amazing.
Have you used it? Have you set yours up?
Yeah, I did the 27 different points of 28 different points of all around my head, the way they said to do it, and I have it on right now. It's awesome. I love it.
Yep. So that's the unbiased, random, on the spot review from.
Yeah, and it's not a paid review. I bought it. I bought it with my own money.
Were you like, holy shit, I had no idea what I was doing before?
I was embarrassed.
Wow.
I was embarrassed that I've been mixing without it. My room, I have acoustic treatment. It's tuned. It sounds good.
And
right?
I've been in your room. It's very, very professional.
Yeah, it sounds good in here.
Did you torture yourself with mixes that you've done? Or did you just leave
what?
It alone?
I listened to a mix that I just did, and it sounds great. It's fine. Because also I had another set of ears on it. Me and the mastering engineer were going back and forth, and he was saying, and he kind of like evened out some of the issues that I might have had in here.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we do have to go now. So it's hour 30. We could keep going. If you guys want Richie to be back, please let me know, because I'm sure that he would probably deny and say no.
I have more excellent ideas that I'm going to give the guitar industry.
Yeah, we're going to do Richie's hot takes.
I'm flooded with them. And
we're just going to change the name. We're going to change the name
to everybody.
It's going to be the Richie and Steve show, where we just tell all the product companies what to do and what everybody wants. All right,
this
buddy.
was fun. Thank you for having me.
Dude, thanks for being on. And if you guys are listening, thank you for listening. Thanks for making it to the end. Be sure to join the giveaway for the HXXL. Thank you to Sweetwater for sponsoring. Thank you to my very good friend, Richie Castellano, for being on the podcast.
My pleasure, man.
All right. Goodbye, everybody.